Welcome back to Monday Special. Of course, our topic tonight is child custody. And in Kenya, the Children's Act defines and guides child custody and the issues around it. According to the Act, custody may be shared between more than one person or solely granted to an individual. Legal custody, however, refers to parental rights and duties granted to an individual in relation to a particular child. And the factors considered by a court when determining child custody are largely informed by the best interest of the child and behavior of the respective parents towards the child. The court also considers the age of the child, health, that is if the child has special needs, and the parent's financial capability. Now, a court can either grant physical or legal custody. Physical custody is when a parent stays with a child, and under this category we have the care, control and possession of the child. That is whether or not that possession is shared with one or more parents. A court can also grant legal custody, and under that there is shared custody, which means custody is given equally to both parents, or sole custody, which means full custody granted to one parent. Now, sole custody is more likely to be granted to the mother. The Children's Act says the custody of a child under 12 years should be with the mother unless she is unfit, that is the mother, because of reasons such as cruelty to the child, being a drunkard or drug addict, or she is guilty of abandoning the child, and so on, as a court may find. The overriding principle, remember, is the court decision must always be made in the best interest of the child. Now, if a couple is not married, then the law automatically grants the custody of the child to the mother. If the father wishes to exercise parental responsibility and have access to the same child, he must seek the court's approval. Now, exhaustive data on child custody cases in Kenya is hard to come by due to the private nature of many such cases. However, data skimmed from Nairobi reveals that in 2012 there were 1,775 child custody cases filed in Nairobi High Courts. In 2013, this number went up to 1,865 cases. And this month alone, that is as of end of January 2014, last month rather, there have been 140 cases filed. Of these cases, many require urgent intervention and come up in court several times a year. The court diary is always therefore clogged. Of course, keep the conversation going using the hashtag MondaySpecialKE on Twitter and send your comments to 22422. Some questions coming up already for Janet and the panel. Somebody here says, what if the mother has married again and the kids get along with the stepfather? Should they spend time with the real father? Can this affect the kids psychologically? And here's somebody, Omar from Laresho, has some interesting text here. My son attempted suicide when he realized I and my wife were divorcing and fighting for his custody. Due to that, we decided to settle our differences and live in peace for the sake of his mental health. How many would do that? Janet and the panel, tell us more.
All right, thanks for that, Hussein. A quick reintroduction of my panel once again. We have John Swaka, who's a family lawyer, Grace Wanja, and then we have Dr. Oscar Gidhua. Grace, of course, has gone through her own issues regarding custody and maintenance, and she'll be able to tell us a little bit about her story. A very controversial topic. I think the four of us have been hashing it out because the law says one thing, but human emotions always say another. So, John, let me start with you. A quick definition of what custody really means and what the laws say in Kenya.
Well, thank you very much, Janet. Custody has two limbs. First of all, being legal custody and actual custody. Legal custody being the very fact that parties can exercise rights and duties over the minor child, and actual custody actually being the very fact that you have the actual possession of this minor child.
All right.
Yes.
And then interestingly enough, we have the Constitution, Article 53, saying one thing about child custody, that both parents ought to look after the child on sort of like a 50-50 basis, but then the Children's Act doesn't say the same. But usually in a court case, it's the Children's Act which is followed. Is that correct?
Yeah, very well. Actually, the Constitution under Article 53 does spell out the rights of the parties in regard to care and control and maintenance of a minor child. And it does say that both parties, that means the father and the mother, have equal rights when it comes to maintenance, when it comes to issues of custody, and many other attendant issues concerning a minor child. But the Parent Act, being the Children's Act, actually is a bit silent to that. And it does actually provide that parties who are parents to a minor child ought to be able to maintain this child. But it doesn't actually say to what extent.
Okay.
But it's very important and very prolific to actually underscore the very fact that in deciding in deciding issues of custody, the court will actually be guided by many other things.
By many other factors, which we'll come into shortly. Grace, let's bring you in right now. Briefly tell us a little bit about your own story concerning you and your now ex-partner regarding your child. What happened?
Okay, for me it happened that we were in a relationship for around about 11 years. But when I got pregnant, the guy tended to disappear, only to come after I gave birth to my child.
He disappeared. Was he denying that that was his child?
No, he wasn't denying that.
Okay, but he disappeared in the sense that he kind of stepped back from responsibility.
Yeah, mainly because of the issue of maintenance.
I see.
Yeah, that's why he disappeared. Yeah.
So then you gave birth to your daughter.
Yeah.
He came back into the picture.
Yeah, he came back into the picture.
Okay.
But still, saying the issue of maintenance still was it's still like a big battle between it all.
Because he doesn't want to pay maintenance.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to pay the maintenance.
Was he also... But he
wants to pay. He wants to pay, but he doesn't really want to really support fully.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and that's something that you're still trying to iron out.
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying still trying it out.
Okay, we'll come back to you for more details. Dr. Guido, let me bring you into this right now. We're really looking at how this affects children. Absolutely. You've seen children in these kinds of situations before. What's the first thing that you notice about them and how this adversely affects them?
Oh, thank you so much, Janet, for the chance. The first thing that happens with children is anxiety and confusion. Remember, they've grown up in a family where both parents are there, and now something is happening that they can't really understand. That also should be guided by their age as well. I mean, in the case of Grace, I believe she said it's an infant. So that's not going to really factor in as much as if it was a teenage person or a school-going child, maybe in standard 5, standard 6.
Who is very aware of what's going on.
Who's aware of what's going on. Yeah. So the confusion levels, or even how it manifests, anger, anxiety, sadness, and even the questions you might get are very different depending on how old they are.
Okay.
A teenage child might actually be in so much more trouble because they're at a point in their life when they're trying to form their own relationships. And that is actually a complexity that actually comes up when you look at child custody issues.
All right. Grace, are you concerned about how this is going to affect your daughter in future?
Yes, I'm concerned, but I think it will really depend on how I will resolve it, and also as well the way I will raise my child. If I raise my child with the fact that I'm still angry with the father, I think it will not be good for my child. So I'm really trying to be like, play both parts. Play the fatherly and the motherly part of it, to my best of it.
What are essentially the rights of the child in a custody situation? Because we always say, the law says that the rights of the child should be taken into consideration. What do we mean when we say that?
The law doesn't actually say the rights, but it says the wishes of the child. That is under Section 83 of the Children's Act.
It says in the best interest.
Yeah, it does.
The best interest of the child.
In determining custody, there are few things that will be considered. One of them being the wishes of the child, of the parents, the ascertainable wishes of the child, customs, religions. Things like. Finally, actually, does talk about the best interest of this child, and so. It doesn't really just say that what the child wants is what the child will be given. The law is there to protect this child. And the law being aware that this is a minor, this is somebody less than 18 years, who may not be able to actually form a very positive decision concerning issues of custody and all the other attendant issues.
Okay, so where do children's rights come in to this whole situation? The rights, the actual rights of a child?
The actual rights of the child are actually contained within the Act itself, where the law does provide that this child has a right to be maintained by both parents. That means when you look at the limb of maintenance, is broader than just the word maintenance. It means it's provision of food, talk about provision of shelter, talk about medical provision, talk about educational needs, psychological needs, emotional needs. And so it's just more than giving out or dishing out money, dishing out school fees, dishing out those kind of things. This child has a right also to relate with the father and obtain paternal love, has a right to relate with the mother and obtain maternal love.
All right, there's a lot of men, we know that the law is the law and that can't change, but let's talk a little bit about the social aspect where a lot of men, and the thing is every case is different, but generally they feel shortchanged. They feel as though automatically it's the woman who is able to gain custody of the child. And I remember when we were talking earlier, you said that if the child is of tender years, and I think you said below 12 and below, essentially the mother is given custody unless she's not of sound mind or ruled unfit to look after the child. Some men argue, I'm just as fit to look after my child. I'm of sound mind, I have the funding, I have everything, and yet my children are with the mother, and she won't let me gain custody of them. So what is it that's coming into play in that situation?
I just think that the law did actually envision the very fact that this child will be in a womb somewhere.
A womb?
Womb,
okay. And
they will be born. And this child is born having been in a mother's womb for about 9 months. And so the very first person whom this child will want to really bond with is the mother, right from the time in the womb up to the point of birth. And so the law tries to protect the best interests of this minor child. This is a child of tender years. It says it is important that a child of these years be with the mother. It is not final. There are some restrictions, or there are some. It may not be the last word. The court has, or rather, the law has what do you call this? It's not a must.
Yeah, they look into different factors to determine.
Yes, there are many factors that the court can look into and decide who is the best person fit to have the custody of the child.
All right, before we come to you, Grace, Dr. Githua, do you find a lot of manipulation of children when it comes to cases of child custody? Do you find that sometimes the parents are misleading the children, pitting them against each other? And how do you deal with such a situation? As
a matter of fact, Janet, what you're talking about is really true. In psychology, we call it triangulation, where a parent wants to communicate to the other parent negative things, but they do that through the child. So for example, I want to say that mommy is a bad person. So I talk to the child and I tell them, you know what, your mother is really horrible, she's really the one who's causing you all this suffering and all that stuff. And what ends up happening is that children at their age end up being so manipulated, not knowing who to listen to. And what do we do about it? I think that John and his colleagues, the principle of cooperation, like we're talking about, to remember that whatever issue you're having with your child, or rather with yourselves, does not have to involve your child negatively. So you cooperate when it comes to issues of the child. But then if you want to fight with each other, please go ahead and do it. But at the end of the day, how to resolve it is by shielding the child
from all the acrimony.
From all the acrimony.
All right, we'll come back to the discussion very shortly. Now, like we mentioned, the law talks about tender years and the fact that the child then is in custody of the mother. So what we did is we asked a few people around the country what they thought about that. We've already said the law is the law, but everyone has an opinion on that. This is what women in various counties had to say with regards to the law saying that children aged 12 and below should be given custody to the mother. Here's a look at some of those reactions.
Sababu huyu mtoto akienda pengine akienda na baba pengine ataoa, si ndio? Na akioa huenda anaweza tesa huyu mtoto, amchukulie kama si mtoto wake.
Katika nyumba mtoto huzaliwa na watu wawili, lakini mzazi mwenyewe ni mama. Mama kwanza anajua uchungu wa mwana. Na sababu kusema mtoto wa miaka 10 abaki na mama ni kuwa mama akibaki na mtoto anajua kila kitu mtoto anahitaji.
Na ninaunga mkono mtoto wa miaka ni kumi kurudi chini wakae na mama. Juu sasa mama ndio ako na uchungu sana na mtoto. Akienda na baba ataleta mama kambo na mtoto ataanza kuteswa.
Some of the panelists are amused. So that's also another issue is now you get the step parent coming into the picture, and that a lot of the time tends to throw the children off. So how then do you make that transition? And is it fair what the ladies are saying? Irrespective, the children should stay with the mother because the mother really understands the pain of what these children go through. You agree?
Yes, I agree.
You agree because you're the mother.
Exactly, I truly agree with that.
I think that the law, in its own wisdom, did provide for the very fact that children of tender years should be with the mother, not really for the fact that men are not responsible, but they were just made in the best interest of the minor child. But there are exceptions. You can't just say because a child is of tender years, so definitely has to be the mother. No, we have mothers also who do not want these children. So if you don't want a child, you are free to give up the custody maybe to the father. If peradventure it may be found out that you are not coherent enough, if it may be found out that you are not responsible enough,
then it will go the other
be
side.
handed over to the
Quick
father.
question, and I'd like you to all jump in on this one. We talked about this earlier. Again, the feeling that a lot of the times when a woman is seeking custody, sole custody, for instance, of a child, sometimes there's greed involved. She's using it as a cash cow, so to speak. Are there situations like that that actually happen?
Of course, you can't rule out that. One of the arguments that have been in court fronted by men, and especially fathers, is that give me the custody of my child, I will take care of my child. I do not want her to keep the custody because she wants to use this child as a bait. You see, as a hoodwink to the court for me to be sending money to her. But this money is not being utilized for the child, it's being utilized for our own purposes. But we must be able to understand the very fact that there are consequences to everything, and there are consequences to giving birth to a child whom maybe the parents will not be living together. And you must be prepared to live by them. And one of the things that you must do is to support that child wherever that child is.
As a responsibility. Have you been accused of that at any point during your situation, that you're trying to gain money for your own reasons and not necessarily to look after your child?
Okay, for me, I haven't been accused for that. I know cases about that. But for me, it's, okay, let me say, genuinely, I'm just chasing after my child maintenance. I'm not bothering about the father of the child taking care of me.
Because you're looking after yourself.
Yes.
You work.
Yes. I'm a small-scale fashion designer. Yeah. So I'm only chasing about the maintenance, of the child.
Okay.
That's what I'm interested in.
Something you've seen as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're right, Janet. I mean, there's definitely going to be those cases, and you can't rule them out, like John said. At the end of the day, we want to see, do the rights of the child, are they being taken into consideration? In this case, if someone is actually trying to manipulate the court, what I would wish at some point is that the court had a mechanism of finding out if this money was meted out, if it's actually being used for that.
Legitimately.
Legitimately. Because, for example, if someone was living in whatever kind of housing, then all of a sudden, because of child support, now
they upgrade their lifestyle.
They've upgraded their lifestyle, now they're living in a different whatever.
Yeah.
And I know many mothers who would argue and say, but the child would have been living like that if the father was in the life. And that's usually the bigger argument. For the men, where the issue comes in is because they say, were it not for me, the lady would not be living in that lifestyle. My child could live in that lifestyle, but not the lady.
Okay.
And of course, in the middle of a custody battle, they're not really doing it because they're friends.
All right. Well, let's listen to what the men had to say. We've sampled the views of some women in the different counties. Here's a look at what some of the men we spoke to had to say.
Na ni mzuri baba achunge, kwa sababu mama akienda kuoleka na bwana mwingine, huyo bwana atatabisha huyo mtoto, kwa sababu anasema sio yake. Hata mama akienda kazi, bengine hiyo mtoto hatapata hata chakula. Bengine hata huyo mzee anaweza akamwambia maid, hiyo mtoto asilishwe kuchinda yangu. Naona? Kwa hiyo badali mtoto abaki kwa baba.
I think the law is okay, because children under 10, they are more inclined to the mother than the father. And in many cases that we've witnessed, once a child loses a mother and the child remains with the father, these children are normally mistreated by the second mother that is married to that family. So I would say that it's better if the child remains with the mother.
Kama mimi niliwachwa nikiwa na miaka 5 na mama yangu. Nililelewa na baba mpaka sasa niko na miaka 40. Nililelewa na mzee wangu. Tukakaa naye mpaka sasa niko na 40 years. So kwa wakati mwingine utakuta kwamba kuna wazee ambao wako able kukaa na watoto wao hata wakiwa wachanga mpaka wanafika mahali ambapo wanajisikia pia ni watu.
Ningependa kuiunga mkono 100% kwa sababu ninajua uchungu wa mtoto, yule mtu ambaye anajua kabisa ni mama. Na ninajua mama akiwachia mtoto ataweza kuangalia mtoto vizuri, ataweza kukua na wakati na yeye, ataweza kuangalia pia maslahi yake hata kiafya na vile ambavyo mtoto anaendelea.
Naona si mzuri kwa sababu kama kuna mtu ambaye anajua mambo ya mtoto sana ni baba. Na baba hawezi kubali mtoto wake ahangaike hapo na pale. Ile kitu ningesema hizi sheria zenye tunapitisha siku hizi zina favor wa mama sana.
Okay, so there we have it. He's saying the laws nowadays just favor the women too much.
Wow.
I know you're neutral because you're a lawyer, but do you also sometimes feel like, and I know we've discussed it, we can just talk about it quickly again, do you sometimes feel like there's a sense of disadvantage towards the father simply because of the role they assume as a man and that they don't understand the nurture aspect of raising a child? Like those gentlemen are saying, one of them said, I was raised by my father, you know, and I've come out okay, I'm 40 years old. Do you feel sometimes that there's a disadvantage towards men in that respect?
Yeah, there could be, one may feel there's some sort of bias, but again, as earlier stated, you know, the law in regard to children, it does consider children as human beings who are growing into something better or something worse, depending on the decisions, the choices that are made. And you must understand that that it's not automatic for the court to bestow custody of a child just with the mother, just because it is a natural perception that the mother is best suited to actually handle issues.
Okay, I have a quick question. I'll start with you, then ask everyone else. Can a child decide which parent they want to stay with, and would that be allowed if a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old said, you know what, I'd like to stay with dad? Is that something that's taken into consideration?
Well, Section 83 of the Children's Act does actually state that in determining issues of custody, the courts will actually be advised or be led or be counseled by several factors. One of the factors being the wishes of the parents, a certain number of wishes of the child, maybe of relatives, maybe of guardians if the child was in the hands of the guardians, the customs and religions, most importantly, the best interest of the child. And so the child, of course, may say, I want to be with my mom, I want to be with my dad. But we must understand that a child is a child. A child can be manipulated by any party. A child can be told, you know what, say you want to be with me. Or a parent can actually use a bait, use anything.
But what if this child genuinely wants to stay with the mother? Genuinely?
What happens usually in law is that the court will actually have an independent examination with this particular child, ask the child some questions, ask the parents some questions. In the absence of the child, in the presence of the child, and also parents absent from each other, and also in the presence of each other, for the court to actually come up with a position that this is in the best interest of the child. The child can't just say, I want to be with my mom or I want to be with my dad, because again, the law is there to protect this child.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Gidua, from what you've seen, how differently do the effects of child custody, especially acrimonious custody battles, affect boys differently from girls? Are there any major differences?
Yes, there are. I mean, only when they are negative, not when they're really amicable and stuff. When they're negative, research has shown, and it's actually the practice, that kids suffer more than girls.
Boys suffer more?
Boys suffer more.
Why is that?
And partly maybe some of the reasons advanced are because girls can express themselves better. We are socialized differently, both male and females. And because boys, what they tend to do is to become more aggressive and angry, behaviors which might lead them to be in trouble in school. So which ends up compounding their situation. They're having to deal with their parent separation. Then now they're having to deal with disciplinary questions. And that's usually what the difficulty ends up being. And also because boys don't talk as much, even when they're that young. And the mode of communication with boys is more play-based than verbal. Girls from very young are very verbal, but boys are not. And I think that is a big, big determinant in how much they react. And I want to say also that in considering the idea of where the kid should go, and following up to what the question about if the child can decide where to go, they can raise the issue. And part of a psychologist's job is to find out why is there that inclination. John alluded to the fact that there's manipulation that might be in play. But also we have to be careful. There are issues like child abuse that we don't like to talk about sometimes. And that is another reason. A child at 5 years old is innocent enough, and if they're actually saying they want to go to somebody
then
else,
you really need to look into
you really
it.
want to, you really don't want to just like ignore that.
Okay.
So what I would do as a psychologist is to look for that child abuse, or whether it's physical, it's sexual, it's verbal or emotional abuse.
And fully interrogate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, Grace, before we take a short break, how has this process affected you personally? Because it's difficult, when you're, trying to hash out, this is what I need from you, this is for the sake of our child. There's obviously issues like anger and disappointment that rise. How has it affected you as a person? Has it made you embittered? Have you become a bit confused and angry with life? How has it affected you as a person?
Okay, for me, I think it has really, not really affected me, but made me more, encouraged me.
It's made you more?
More encouraged me.
Because you want to fight for the rights of
Yeah,
your
because
child.
I want to fight for the rights of my child. Because really, if I sit down and get angry or cry, then what will my child do? So I have to fight for her. Yeah. So it has really made me the opposite.
Has your family and friends been supportive of you?
Yeah, they have. They have really supported me on this. Yeah. So I'd even like to tell women out there, don't just sit back. Speak out. There's people out here who can help you, like FIDA and other certain NGOs. The child court also do that. So don't sit back and cry. Speak out for your children. Yeah, it's very important for their present and their future life.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. We're going to take a short break. Mary Kamande will be joining Hussein in the other studio. She has a 9-year-old. She'll give us a little perspective of how it's affected her child's life and some of the issues she's dealing with regards to child custody. We'll be right back.